Hi, Niamh.
Hi, Kat. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Good, not too bad, not too bad. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. I'm very excited to talk to you here today about everything that's been happening in the assessment security space over the last year. I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So, to everyone here today, my name is Kat. I work at VICTVS, and just in case you didn't know who we are, we specialize in delivering high stakes assessments on a global scale, both in centre and in remote exams. And here today, as my guest, I have Niamh Pierce, who is at ASRG, which is the Assessment Security Research Group, and they are our research division here at VICTVS. Niamh has done some really fantastic work as part of ASRG, and that work has covered wearable devices. You may have seen Niamh talk about these before at events like AO Forum, and she's also covered mobile assessment, and obviously last year produced the State of the Nation paper, which was on the kind of it was looking at a lot of different themes, but it was trying to cover what the most pressing ones are in terms of risks to assessment integrity. So in that paper, Niamh covered the rising risks associated with contract cheating, generative AI and LLMs, as well as other tech threats, exam center security, and also impersonation. That's something which Niamh's going to be talking about today because she just released another paper specifically on that topic called Candidates for Hire. So yeah, the process today is that Niamh is going to be going through a presentation and looking at how things have changed since the paper came out last year, covering those topics which I just mentioned, and then we will end with a short Q&A. If anyone has any questions, please do leave them as a comment on the event in LinkedIn. That's the easiest way for us to see them. I'll be checking LinkedIn at the end so I can see if anyone's left any questions. I have some of my own for Niamh as well, and I'll kind of be interjecting here and there throughout Niamh's presentation, just with any questions or comments that I have. Without further ado, Niamh, why don't you go ahead and start your presentation?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. Great to like that to be a year on and see everything kind of being able to look back on where we've come since this time last year. Just to maybe give you a little bit of background on ASRG before we dive into the topic today. ASRG, or the Assessment Security Research Group, is the research division of VICTVS, as you already mentioned, and like that, VICTVS gives us the practical insight from the frontline of exam delivery, which is super helpful in terms of the research that we're currently producing in ASRG. So we're investigating the main challenges that affect assessment security, especially with new technologies and methods constantly emerging. And we aim to bring together voices from across the education and assessment sector to start some deeper discussion and research into the risks, trends, and in general, the future of assessment security. So the kind of aim is to, I suppose, stay ahead of the curve. And we think that working together is the best way to do that, creating a safe space for people to share their insights, to access reference research that's based in fact, that's practical and actionable, so that in general, it's just a lot more useful to people. And yeah, that's what we're about. So just to get straight into it, as you already mentioned, the State of the Nation paper was our inaugural paper. So it was the first one ASRG produced, and it was really kind of focused on giving an overview of, I suppose, the state of assessment security at that point in time, bringing together like key risks and pressures and emerging threats that were affecting assessment integrity across the sector. And so I'm going to just revisit some of those threats and consider where we are now compared to where we were almost a year ago, and focus on kind of four main areas that we had covered in the original paper, which, as you can see, there is contract cheating, AI and large language models, or LLMs, technical threats, and exam center security. So across each of these areas, we're going to explore what's changed, kind of what's accelerated, and what challenges we are watching that are continuing to develop. We're also going to look at ASRG's latest paper, Candidates for Hire, and look at the growing issue of impersonation and proxy candidates and what that really means for the future of assessment security. I suppose just to get started, we'll have a look at contract cheating, which is one of the first topics we covered in the State of the Nation paper. Like that, when we were looking at contract cheating, really we were focusing on it as a globalized service. It was operating across borders online rather than in the traditional word of mouth format. And like that, while contract cheating might be illegal in the UK, this is not always the case in other countries, and suppliers of contract cheating services often take advantage of this. We also highlighted the growing role of social media, including platforms like TikTok, and how these services advertise, reach, and target students or their target audience. And we're still seeing a lot of these patterns today. Contract cheating services are continuing to use social media and messaging platforms to target students directly. Some websites are becoming a lot more sophisticated in how they're presenting themselves. Many now are trying to kind of market themselves as by using terms like essay help or helper or tutoring services to avoid detection. We're also seeing a growing use of AI and so-called humanizers to kind of streamline content production and to make the content appear more natural. So like that, students can upload their own work or examples of their own work to make it sound more like it's come from them. And this creates additional risk for students too, because work can still be flagged as AI, even if it has been externally produced, because like that, if you're not creating the content yourself, you have no control over where that content is coming from. And because this is a globalized market, supplier websites can be based almost anywhere in the world, and many are deliberately difficult to trace due to the kind of covert and illicit nature of the business. Excuse me. They generate kind of significant income from students, while the actual writing itself is actually carried out by individuals from areas where there is usually very limited economic or employment opportunities, or where there might already be a large amount of IT outsourcing, or like an industry for that already. Ghostwriters, which is what they're called, um, have been found in multiple countries, including Pakistan, India, Kenya, to name a few. And yeah, so in many cases, writers are only receiving a small fraction of what the students are actually paying for these assignments, with the majority of the fee being retained by the platform or the contract cheating supplier or the operating service. Kenya in particular has been really highlighted as a major hub for this. It's estimated that there are around 40,000 ghostwriters working in Nairobi alone. This is something that's actually explored in the Shadow Scholars documentary with Professor Patricia Kingori, and she looks at the large-scale essay writing industry in Kenya, and the documentary really highlights how highly educated Kenyans are producing academic work for students globally, with some earning as little as like $1 an hour. And it's not just highlighting an academic integrity issue, but I think it's also like that form of modern colonialism where intellectual labor in the global south is a resource that's exploited and used in the global north, and the real academic writers, they remain invisible, under recognized for the work that they're producing. And draws attention to something that's often missed in discussions around contract cheating, where our focus is usually on the candidate or the supplier service and rarely on the writers themselves. So that's definitely something that's worth a watch, and that's available on Channel 4. So I do recommend people to take a look at that if they get a moment. We've also seen in terms of contract cheating how cycles of dependence can develop. When services like this are so easily accessed and so normalized, I suppose, it can be easy, I suppose, for some students to move from once-off use to repeated reliance on these services over time. And that's, again, not only an academic integrity issue, but it's also like a behavioral pattern that's shaped by this availability, that's shaped by normalization. And I think a key example with this would be the case in, you're probably aware, with the University of Sydney earlier this year, where large numbers of students, including many international students, were found to have engaged in contract cheating, in not only just to complete assignments, but to earn their degrees. And I think the concern is that it's not just an isolated for like incident of misconduct, but that the way these services create longer term dependence and normalize outsourcing of um, uh, of content creation, of outsourcing of academic work as being part of the normal assessment process. That's really where the concern is. So yeah, that's kind of the main kind of topics I see emerging around contract cheating, based just on what we looked at in the State of the Nation, where we've come from. Our next kind of topic at hand then would be the AI and LLMs. Now, before I get into this, I always think it's really important to distinguish AI from LLM like that. A lot of times when we talk about AI, we are referring to LLMs, but like that, it's a big, broad term. So LLMs, or large language models, is really the kind of main challenge we're talking about when we're talking about threats to assessment security. So this is our generative text tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, like that. AI is a much broader term, so we like to be specific on it. We're talking about LLMs. And when we looked at these threats, before, we were discussing how they've become a lot more mainstream. Humanizers, again, like we already mentioned with the contract cheating, are designed to rewrite that generated content from an LLM and make it appear more human to avoid detection. We've got browser extensions as well that can give candidates access to LLMs in the middle of exams. So that would be a case where they can highlight a question, and generative text or large language models will generate an answer immediately for them. And I think one interesting example of this, which we looked at in the paper, was Cluely. So this was a company that mentioned, like we mentioned in the State of the Nation paper, it was originally started out as Interview Coder, a Chrome extension that was designed to help students in interviews with LeetCode tasks, a kind of coding software. And it really gained attention because they were marketing themselves as a tool to cheat on everything. And that was their kind of slogan. And this was actually shared on the impersonation website, which we look at in our most recent paper. However, though, it's recently been repositioning itself as an AI meeting assistant instead of a cheating tool. Now, this is likely due to maybe performance issues, but I think this shift also indicates that there is increasing competition in this market, and you have to be good to keep up. Like that, people will just move to a different supplier if a tool is not doing what it's supposed to. And I think what is particularly interesting in how these tools are now being marketed directly to students is, so again, something I think where maybe could do with a bit more attention. Like that, my algorithm has been totally messed up from the research I've been doing. Like that, because of the topics I look at and the websites I look at, I've personally started receiving ads for humanizer tools and undetectable AI on Snapchat, which I think says a lot about the target audience and the age range that these companies are looking to target and reach. Now, at the same time, I think we're also seeing a growing use of large language model assisted study supports. Like, students are not only using LLMs to generate answers, but also as revision tools or writing assistants and study partners. And this, I think, changes the conversation, because the issue is no longer simply about trying to rule out LLM use altogether. Many universities are now appearing to move away from trying to completely ban or detect all LLM use, and are instead focusing on helping students use these tools more ethically and more transparently in their research and writing. And I think viewing them as a learning tools, like I suppose similar to the internet, but obviously it's around, there are questions around the credibility and reliability of the information that is produced. I actually think this is something you covered recently in Victus.
Yes, yes. So, just in case our viewers are not aware, we have a podcast at Victus. It's on YouTube and Apple and Spotify. But we recently spoke to the very intelligent and very wonderful Richard de Blaquier Clarkson from the University of Leeds. He leads the AI Hub there, which is basically a group of people who are trying to kind of keep academics fully abreast of developments in the generative AI space. And their goal is to try and ensure that students use generative AI ethically in university when possible. Sometimes it might not be ethical at all, but that's a whole other conversation, which we also cover in the podcast. But it was fascinating talking to him because the balance that they have to strike between knowing that students are going to be using AI regardless, many of them will be, and then ensuring that the way it is used doesn't hamper candidates learning in the way that they are supposed to and getting accurate grades which reflect what they truly know. It's a tough balance, and it's obviously something which universities are all having to deal with. They know that, I think, yeah, for many of them, they know that blanket banning generative AI just won't work. Richard used the analogy of a cake in the podcast, and he said that, like baking a cake, if, well, I'm going to give his analogy for you guys. He said if you are being told to decorate a cake, it doesn't matter where you get the cake from, as long as you have it. You can think of AI in a similar way. There might be tasks where it's kind of okay for a candidate to use AI for some of it, as long as the part where they're supposed to be learning, that's something they do themselves. So yeah, it's a very complex conversation. Richard explains everything a lot better than I possibly could in the podcast. We also had an episode recently with another AI expert. He's more of a consultant and he's quite positive about AI. That was Nacho de Gregorio Noblehouse. I have a terrible Spanish accent, so please excuse that. But he also spoke about AI being integrated into schools. I think it was Alpha School in Texas. So two separate conversations there. I would definitely recommend going and listening to them both. It's a very complex issue, and we just keep seeing the technology develop. And I think when we look back on this again in another year's time, Niamh, you'll just have more things to talk about and worry about.
Yeah, that's it. And like that, there's a lot of things I think as well with having a teaching background as well. I can definitely understand the concerns people have around AI and LLM use. And I think as well, we're seeing that the conversation really shifting in the past year, not from whether students are going to use these technologies, but how education can adapt to them responsibly. Like that teaching and learning is going to evolve. We've got students who are growing up with these tools. They're likely to use them throughout their working lives. So I suppose the focus is probably shifting a lot towards applied knowledge, critical thinking, and moving towards how students use information rather than simply whether technology was involved or not in the process. Like you were saying, like that, it works for some things and maybe not for others, and it's about finding that balance.
For sure. I think also, like Richard was saying, it's hard to say that it's hard for academic institutions to fully ban AI when they know that the students that they are teaching will go into a workplace where they are expected, or for the most part, expected to use this technology. I mean, that is a very difficult conversation. It's all well and good saying let's ban it all, but it's not when I had a friend looking for a job recently and it says in the job application, you have to know how to use AI and be able to understand prompts.
Yeah.
So yeah, very, very difficult. We could do a whole other webinar just on that, but I will let you carry on with your
No,
presentation.
yeah, it's definitely a hot topic, and it has been. It was a hot topic last year. It's a hot topic this year, and like that, I'm interested to see where it goes next year. What we'll be talking about this time next year in terms of AI and LMs. But yeah, just to, I suppose, move on with our topics. This is one I'm used to talking about. Like that, I suppose people who've met me before, this is probably what I'm most associated with. And this would be technical threats. So these were the cheating devices that I'm always talking about. But yeah, this is in the State of the Nation paper, we identified the growing risk of cheating tools and hidden devices in assessment. And I think since then, it's something we've further explored in our divisive deception paper, which we looked at both wearable and non-wearable devices. And like that, that paper covered a wide range of devices, including earpieces, smart glasses, smart watches, hidden cameras, cheating calculators. And some of those earpieces that are available now, they're so small, they require a magnetic kind of tool to insert the earpiece into the actual ear canal, and then the magnetic side is used to remove it afterwards. So obviously there's a lot of health and safety concerns with that. You can actually see that on the screen there. It's the tiny little magnetic circle on the tip of the finger there. That's how small they are these days. So obviously that is very concerning, and like that recent data from Ofqual, I think, highlights how significant device-related misconduct remains. In 2025, 5,025 students were issued penalties for cheating, with 44.3% of cases involving smartphones or other communication devices. So it's safe to say that this has not slowed down. I suppose one positive development over the past year is that I've noticed a lot of exam guidance and protocols are beginning to make note of these developments. Previously, instructions, they'd have ruled out the kind of the items you'd think of, the smartphone, maybe the smartwatch, but I'm increasingly seeing references to smart glasses and things like this, so, or like that, hidden cameras, and it's good that we're outlining those in our protocols. And like that, it just shows that there's greater awareness of the threat that these devices pose. And
I was just gonna,
yeah,
sorry to
no,
interject
please,
you,
yeah.
to talk about the podcast again, but we had you as a guest on the podcast. I just want to make people aware that you can go and watch our episode, like actually watch us trying out all of these crazy devices,
Yeah.
which was very interesting because it made me feel like James Bond.
Yeah.
When we've got a little earpiece and you can attach a mic to your shirt, and try these glasses where they have an actual screen come down at the top where you can
Yeah.
read prompts. And I think you were saying recently about hasn't there been some kind of development where the glasses now can link
Yeah.
to the ring? That's
Yes,
it.
yeah. So the glasses which we looked at a year before, they were the even realities glasses, which again aren't specifically made with cheating in mind, but like that, if someone was so inclined, they could potentially use them in that way. But the new G2s, which is the latest model, have as you mentioned there, the or1 ring, which can be used as a secondary control for the glasses. So you actually don't need to touch the glasses anymore to use any of the functions. Obviously, their AI has improved as well. And again, it's just making that, from an assessment security perspective, the interaction with the glasses is even less visible. They also have come up with an even hub, which is supporting apps that are connected to the glasses and app development, which obviously is like a great thing in terms of tech. But again, all it takes is someone with the intention to make some sort of cheating software that fits these glasses, makes them a lot more threatening. Again, while a lot of these features are designed for productivity and accessibility, they can also be adapted to support cheating or covert communication in assessments. So that's kind of like that. These devices, they're always moving, they're always changing. And I suppose I would say overall, the key change in the past year, it's not simply that do more devices exist, but it's that the technology that's already there, it's getting smaller, it's getting more discreet, and it's getting harder and harder to detect. So like that, I think it's something like that with the glasses. Brand recognition is really important, because like that, if an invigilator knows what these kind of glasses look like, they're more likely to spot them in an exam. So or if you know that the earpieces need like that, the collar, like you see in the picture, that's there to conduct for those, that's merely what you should be looking out for, because you're not going to find an earpiece that small inside someone's ear. But yeah, that's kind of, I would say, the main overall arc is that it's smaller, and therefore harder to track. But yeah, really interesting topic. And like that, again, if that's something that's of interest, we have a whole paper going down the rabbit hole on that. But yeah, I suppose that kind of brings us to our last section of the State of the Nation paper, and that was exam center security. Like that, the last time we looked at this topic, we were really focused on occupational complacency as a risk within exam center security. And I think over time, when procedures become routine, there is a danger that unusual behavior or warning the usual warning signs stop standing out, particularly if you're in a busy or high pressure assessment environment where maybe there isn't enough invigilators, maybe the protocols haven't been updated or training hasn't been updated. That can really put a lot of strain on security. And over the past year, we've continued to kind of see examples that reinforce this concern, like that. And I'm sure, again, you've probably heard about this with that teacher in Leeds who was found guilty of, I think it was unacceptable professional conduct because they were caught whispering answers to a student in a French GCSE exam. And there was another case then of men, I think there was 4 men arrested in a construction training exam center where they were taking payments in exchange for candidates being able to pass their exams. So we're still seeing that, like that, issues with the, I suppose, top-down integrity, and like that, having procedures in place, but those procedures not being applied consistently or being reviewed critically. That's where kind of we leave gaps for misconduct.
I think
And yeah.
also, just to add on to that as well, like
Mm-hmm.
we've literally just seen with the NEET exams in India,
Yeah.
it's that whole issue. It's because the paper's been leaked and they basically
Mm-hmm.
had to reschedule the exam, which is very upsetting for people who did do really well. It seems to be that issue was to do with mismanagement.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other issue as well, which basically leads to problems with integrity. If you don't have enough
Mm-hmm.
staff, if your infrastructure is not big enough to cope with millions of people, thousands of people taking an exam, yeah, it's easier to get these issues,
Yeah.
for the whole thing to kind of fall apart in terms of integrity. It's not as rigorous; it can't be.
No.
So yeah, there's some
Yeah.
big issues there.
That's it. And like that, it's just something like that, something small that can create a gap or a space for this kind of activity. And yeah, like that, it's really interesting thing to see, because like that, we're constantly seeing new cases about this. And yeah, like that, exam center security, in aside from the occupational complacency, the other thing we were really kind of looking at was ID verification. And I think this remains a concern, particularly in relation to online and remote assessments. And again, that's something we've really explored in greater depth in the latest paper, the Candidates for Hire paper. And that's a case study on impersonation services and assessment, looking at like growing issues of impersonation and proxy candidates. So yeah, this is actually probably a good time just to even introduce this paper and explain what it's all about, because it is linked. It's a very important aspect of exam center security is ID verification. And yeah, just to, I suppose, show you what we've been working on most recently. So this is Candidates for Hire. So impersonation and exam fraud, it's nothing new. Like that, as long as there have been candidates willing to cheat, there's always going to be someone there with the skill and the willingness to sit an exam on their behalf. And that's usually in exchange for financial gain, or like that, it might be a friend of a friend, this kind of arrangement. And like that, we've all seen the like popular culture versions of this, like films like Catch Me If You Can or Catfish, the TV series, like that, where impersonators, they're going to be presented as this kind of lovable rogue character, or a very desperate individual. But these kind of stories, they don't really highlight the serious dangers that this kind of behavior can cause, and the, like, especially in terms of cheating, the implications it can have. So like that, how would you feel if you found out your surgeon or your doctor was performing a procedure on you and had someone else sit all their exams for them? I'm sure you'd feel a lot more different about how that procedure was going to go. Or if you were hiring someone for a job in your organization and found out their qualifications were not their own, how would that make you feel about them or the qualification? So like, these are real risks. They're affecting the trust and safety in professional and academic assessments and qualifications. Impersonators or proxy candidates, they might once have been individuals who are serving a very small group or circle of clients, usually operating word of mouth. But today they are organized networks. They're offering bundled cheating services. They're combining tech, tools, impersonators all into one service, and they're promoting it online, where it's easily accessed to anyone who's willing to pay for it. Like that, the internet has given impersonation services a real opportunity to expand beyond, like, the small local networks, where they can reach a much larger global market. Online assessments have also created opportunities for impersonation by removing the need for a test center, or for removing the need for them to use like that, the silly disguises, or it's kind of essentially allowing individuals to sit exams remotely on behalf of other candidates. Like that, the kind of physical barriers that would have been in place before, I suppose, are lessened. Uh, and at the same time, you've got online marketing, instant messaging, global payment systems. All of these things have made it easier for impersonators to advertise their services and reach potential clients. These services are now promoted through very professional looking websites and social media platforms. Often they're giving great assurances, they're like claiming to guarantee confidentiality. And impersonation is now really being presented as a commercial service rather than a kind of covert arrangement or form of misconduct. And so in this paper, we're looking at this current market for impersonation and proxy candidates through a case study of a website that really boldly advertises what they're doing. They're charging high fees, they're promoting discretion, they're doing this all while deliberately attempting to maintain a low profile while still targeting their audience. So it's a very delicate balance. It's really not hidden. It's not an obscure part of the internet. It's open to anyone who's like that, willing to know, or like that, someone who knows where to look. And by that, I mean, you can take your phone out now and look up, do my exam for me, and you will find 10, 15, 20 versions of the same service, all being supplied in different websites. So they exist in plain sight. You just need to know where to look, and you need to think like someone who is trying to cheat on an exam. And I think this is probably a good time for me to introduce you to Daisy, because I can explain all this away, but I always think it's best if people get to see it for themselves. Like that, the best learning comes from examples. So yeah, without further ado, anyway, this is Daisy. So Daisy is the face of a website that we cover as our case study in the paper. Daisy is supplying impersonation services, or claiming to provide impersonation services globally for a range of online assessments. So that globe you see in the background comes from their website, where they're providing live updates of the assessments they're sitting on behalf of their customers around the world. So this is part of how the website is really presenting itself, or how the service, I suppose, is presenting itself. And it's really about signaling their scale, the scale of their activity and their reach. The message is clear. This is not small or local. This is global, and it's always operating 24/7, 7 days a week. And the website, like many others, it's not hard to find. A simple Google search for "do my exam for me," and like that, the lists of websites are endless. And if we take a little look at the actual website itself, you'll notice just from the tabs at the top that these are exams that are more commonly associated with the United States. Assessments such as the LSATs, the GMAT, the GRE. These are all globally recognized qualifications, and usually what I would consider a gateway qualification, whether that's to higher education, to greater employment opportunities, or to maybe migration, or whatever you might need it for. And the prices of these services are very high. So the site does provide a warning that their online assessments begin in the thousands of dollars, while they have actually moved into a new in-person service, which starts at $20,000, positioning themselves as a real premium, high-risk service that's not open to everyone. Like that, they give a little nod to having good relationships and long-established relationships with test centers in the areas they do provide that in-person service. So again, that tells us a lot about how they're operating. And what is being offered is not just a person to take an exam, it's a complete service, including the impersonator, the supporting technology, and guidance on how to avoid detection. So they will go in, they will remotely take control of your laptop or computer, they will put their software in the computer, sit the exam for you, and then remotely remove the software and all traces that they were ever there off the laptop afterwards. And all this is, again, to totally discreet and to avoid detection. They ask you to remain anonymous and really promote anonymity in their service too, while also getting you to review their service at the end and give them a 5-star. So like that, it is a very kind of worrying, I would say, service that they're providing, especially because they are promoting not only like this kind of something that really just attacks assessment security and undermines assessment integrity, but also can put candidate health at risk, as they're promoting things like smart drugs and the misuse of prescription drugs to improve cognitive performance in exams. So like that, it is quite dangerous what these sites are doing and how professionally they present themselves.
Yeah, it's extremely concerning. I think something I was thinking about earlier when you were talking about wearable devices, and which also applies to this, is I'm from a digital privacy slash cybersecurity background, so I'm always thinking of these things too. And you mentioned there about these people claiming that they can take over your laptop remotely to help do the assessment for you. I mean, that's a huge cybersecurity risk. We have to, or candidates who are using these services really have to trust these complete strangers with their private data, their laptops, their security. It's such a black box. Like, we don't know what these people are really doing. They're just claiming to do all of these things. I mean, candidates who sign up for these services could have their data stolen, or at least their personal information. I know that was a concern with the Sydney case that you mentioned earlier on, because for the contract cheating there, the people providing the service, they had to get access to the University of Sydney, or the other university in Sydney. They had to get access to the portal, which is also putting the university at risk. So there's all these different angles to consider. And yeah, it's fascinating to see that these services are being promoted openly online, as well as on social media as well, like you mentioned earlier. There's so many different vectors really within this area of concern. It's just, yeah, it's hard to stay on top of everything that's going on. There's so much to consider, and I think you've done a great job in this paper at kind of covering this issue, and you've done a real deep dive into this one service specifically that's on screen now. I think people should definitely go and take a look. Where can people find this paper, Niamh? I feel like you've got a QR code, I believe.
Yeah, I do. I love a QR code. But yeah, like that, I've only scratched the surface of kind of the kind of some of the highlights, I suppose, from the paper, but like that, the full report dives much deeper. So like that, anyone who's watching, please feel free to scan the QR code. That'll bring you straight to the candidates for hire paper. Like that, in ASRG, we're always looking to hear what people think. We'd love to hear thoughts like that, what surprised people, what questions they have, what they'd like to read about next. But yeah, I think it's especially interesting to see the difference between, like, you've got your small scale suppliers who are usually operating on social media versus a much more professional, organized service like these websites. And like that, if you think, okay, but that's only one, and it's, you know, they're focused on one particular market, like they're everywhere, they're in every country. So it's definitely worth something taking a look at for sure.
Yeah, I think so. It would be great if people could send in their questions at this point. If you have any, as I said, it's useful to leave them underneath the actual event on LinkedIn, and then hopefully I should be able to see them. I'm just checking now to see if anyone's sent any in. Oh, I will check again in a second. I do have my own question, Niamh, which is just, what threat do you think is the most pressing out of the issues that you've discussed today?
Yeah, oh, that's a great question. Can I pick all of them? Oh, yeah. Well, if I think, yeah, to be honest, I think there's a lot of we always think, okay, if I just switch exam format, you know, if I don't do it online exams, if I do in-person exams, my exam will be more secure. If I do this kind of exam, my exam will be more secure. If I include this or I include that. I think for me, the biggest threats are the ones where exam format doesn't matter. So things like the cheating devices or the impersonators, they can undermine any exam format, and they will find a way to do it like that. A discrete device or a person who is like that, trained to sit an exam remotely, or is able to purchase a fake ID to sit an exam on behalf of someone else, they're always going to be threats. And for me, like that, again, it doesn't matter what format you have your exam in, they're always going to exploit any sort of vulnerability in any exam format. So yeah, I think currently for me, those are the two that really stand out.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point about these risks being present for both remote and in-person exams. There's obviously been a lot of discussion about remote exams specifically and the threats they pose, but I think if we're not too careful, we just start worrying about those, and we forget that a lot of these new and emerging threats are also present in test centers, and it's very risky to not think about that. The wearable
Yeah.
devices, I mean, as you said, they're present in both arenas. People have to be training their invigilators specifically how to look out for these things,
Yeah.
and be wary that there's no format that is going to completely remove risk. All you can
Yeah.
do is really stay clued up on these emerging risks and think of ways to combat them, whether that's through really excellent invigilator training. We do some great invigilator training at VICTVS. But you have to do that. You also have to have really great rules, environmental rules, very strict technical rules for remote exams as well as in-person exams. And you've just got to keep developing those, really, and having these conversations like we
Yeah.
are now. Super important, and
Mm-hmm.
I know that that's something that you're going to continue doing with ASRG. I think it's probably worth mentioning that members of ASRG, it's free to be a member.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is.
You can
Yeah.
get in touch with Niamh and suggest things that you would like her to look into. I know that that's
Yeah.
something you're keen for, is to hear from other people.
That's it. And like that, on back to me just loving a QR code. But like that, if you'd like to learn more about ASRG, or even have a look at our research is available in our posts on the website. But like that, if you're interested in keeping up to date what we're doing, our members get exclusive access to all our research. And so like that, it's definitely something I would recommend looking at if this is of interest to you or is applicable to what you're doing. We love to hear from people. That's what we want, is we want conversation about these topics, because then it's bringing them into the light and we're all openly talking about them, which I feel is what makes assessment a bit more secure, is conversation, communication, sharing insight. And so like you said, our membership is free, and our latest papers, updates on our blogs, you get all of that as one of our members, and you can stay up to date with everything that's happening in the assessment world. But yeah, like that, we'd love to hear from you. We love working. We just believe in working together with people to make assessments more secure for everyone. That's our aim. And like that, I think it's I find it a very interesting topic, and I hope other people do too. And like that, we try to make our research something that's accessible, like that. You don't need to be an expert to understand what we're trying to get across to you. It's taking things that might be complicated and making them easily accessible for everyone.
Yeah, which is super important. Obviously, you do some really great work. I'm just double checking again to see if we've got any questions. I appreciate it's a bit difficult having to just go and leave it underneath
No problem.
the LinkedIn post. I'm just double checking. I know that I can see we've had a comment on here from Matthew Wilson, who's a global operations manager at VICTVS, who's just talking about the power imbalance between global north-south being locked in via contract cheating, which, yeah, again, we could talk about that for
All day.
a whole other webinar. Yeah, it's super interesting how these imbalances are sustained through like digital means now. Yeah, really fascinating.
Yeah, and I think even in terms of, say, like the impersonation and the cost that is, you know, again, that again highlights this kind of imbalance there is in who can access these services as well. But yeah, I think I would highly recommend the Shadow Scholars documentary. It gives a really good insight into that kind of take on contract cheating. It's excellent.
Well, I think we'll leave it there. If anyone wants to get in touch with Niamh with any questions following this, please do. If you are interested in VICTVS at all, you can obviously go to our website. You can see how our name is spelled here, victvs.co.uk. Obviously, you can follow us both on LinkedIn and check out the podcast as well, which I mentioned earlier, which is on YouTube and just your normal podcast streaming services. Thank you again, Niamh, for such a great talk and overview of the state of assessment security now in 2026. Yeah, that was really, really great to hear from you, and I hope that our watchers thought so too.
Thanks so much, and thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And with that, I will wish you all a great rest of your day and hopefully speak to you soon. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye,
Bye.
Niamh.